Welcome back to the Taylosian Tech Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the universe is against us. Everyone is trying to stop this show from happening. And for the past 2 months, the universe has been winning. But today we fight back. We do our very best to keep the show going. Thanks for showing up, Mike. I appreciate you.
I tried my best. It has been a minute. It's been 2 months. I think last time people saw me, I was burning up, or it sounded like I was burning up in a car. Thankfully, I survived. I'm alive, and I'm here. I'm still... I guess you didn't see me in this trailer because we did try another podcast. Didn't end up happening due to technical difficulties. But otherwise...
We found 1,000 ways how to not record a podcast.
Yes, and
That's
one of
what we've
those
been doing.
included doing a whole podcast and then being like, we'll just not deal with that. Just kidding. We had some technical difficulties, but we're here. Unfortunately, Randy and Nick couldn't make it, so they won't get to...
If you're hearing this, it worked. The MacBooks
Don't curse it.
are functioning. If you're not hearing this, I don't need to address that.
You're
That's
just
fine.
addressing the ether, or the void? The void. You're addressing the void. All right.
Speaking of void, we've had a lot happen since the last time we talked, to say the least. There is so much catching up to do, but I think probably we should start from kind of the beginning, some of the more obvious stuff we haven't documented since the start, since our absence, since our break.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you were able to catch the whole event, right? You saw it?
I believe so. I think I watched through all of it. Yeah. If you
got all of our Mother Nature.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can't tell, if you're watching this, I have a different background because I'm on a road trip. At the time, I was watching it on the East Coast for once instead of on the West Coast.
Oh.
So that was fun, being able
to... afternoon Apple event.
Yeah, and then also for pre-ordering times, even though I didn't order anything. Spoilers, I guess.
Okay.
It was nice to get up at a normal time and then go and see that the Apple Store was still offline until about whatever time that I think it was like 9 o'clock in the morning that it was going to come online then, Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, yeah.
That felt great.
Right.
Because it's like, I don't have to wake up really early. But also, I've got no need to, but
East Coast advantage.
Yeah. I mean,
you guys get to sleep in.
There are some advantages being on the East Coast. But what you're getting at, I did watch the whole event. The beginning felt a little bit kind of just like, look at all these not sob stories, but look what we can do with our products that save lives. I'm like, that's great. Can you show me some products, please?
Yeah. What's your take on guilt marketing? That's what I ran that stuff. Is like, this has been used to save people's lives. And we're also using those true stories, which are sad, and I'm happy that people survived or were able to use their Apple products to get out. But it definitely does feel like there's a bit of a push and there's an angle to it of like, well, you care about your life, right? So you should buy these products. Like,
I think it depends on
where do you fall on that?
It depends on where it lies in the scale for me of like between... I tripped and fell in the playground, and I was able to ask Mom to come pick me up, to Sarah McLachlan in the arms of the angel with dogs and sad puppies behind cage doors looking like they're going to have their lives ended.
Fall detection saved these puppies.
Basically.
They're alive because of my ECG sensor.
I would say, like, if it's like one being fell on the playground and Mom needs to come pick me up and the watch helped out, versus Sarah McLachlan, arms of an angel. This person had their arm mutilated, but was able to somehow tap on their Apple Watch Ultra that they're here, and the helicopter came and picked them up, and they fought for hours in the ER room. I'm more like towards, I tripped and fell in the playground.
Okay.
I don't need something.
So a 3.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be that. It's great that like we have those stories. I think it's fantastic that we hear about these and like how this tech is literally saving lives. But at the same time, it's like, okay, we don't need to put this right at the very beginning. I would say like a little tidbit, like when they're talking about like the Ultra 2 and all that. Just add in like a small little blurb of like, this has helped save lives, like Jerry, who fell at Half Moon or whatever, Half Moon Bay, and was dangling.
Jerry had a skill issue.
Jerry was jogging on the coastline like we had in our last year's thing. He was emulating what we were doing, but we can't legally say that. And
Yeah.
and
You know how
he
the
looked-
Apple executives are always in these scenic locations?
Mhm.
You could have one of them like they use some visual effects or something, and they like trip and fall off a mountain, and then they're like their bone is broken and their legs are twisted backwards, but they like keep presenting. They're like, I just fell down and had an accident, but thanks to the Apple, and their legs are all like
mangled.
twisted and mangled. That's the word. And they're all just like, I would find that funnier, but maybe I have too dark.
I think if they were not too sensitive to what that would do to sales and how many calls they would get from parents about this was unsafe for my child to watch, I think there definitely is a market as evident from The Boys and Invincible and anything else that Amazon's been kind of kicking out that's a little bit more gore centric. There is a market for that.
Amazon. Just Amazon.
It's not.
But
it's not HBO
hey,
Max
the Apple event is being streamed during school hours, so technically, they should have the argument that this is not for kids, right?
I suppose so. Which
there's dark topics. There's dark humor, potentially.
The new iPhone 15 is so dark.
Text. Yeah, that titanium unveil could scare some kids.
Oh my goodness!
You know,
avert eyes, parents, because this is just too graphic with the titanium texture on the sides. It's just too much.
I wish there was censored imagery, but I think I overall agree with you that the publishing those sad stories or those uplifting stories is okay, but just not in that context. Like,
I don't think it needs to be up front and center too much like they did with this event, where it's just like, was it like 2 to 5 minutes of just like, I think it was 5 minutes of just straight like,
it was a while.
Here's
it felt like it kept going.
What we've done to save lives, or here's how we connected people together. It's like, that's great. Integrate it a little bit more cleverly, so like you get me a little bit more invested in it, rather than being on this podcast and being like, not a bad presentation, but like, here's where you could tweak a few things. Like, I want one where it's just like, I have no complaints about this presentation at all. Like, there's nothing I could really complain about besides being utterly, I mean, I'm already right now being utterly obnoxious about, 5 minutes of my time was wasted because they were telling a story that changed people's lives and actually saved people. But
that's what we're here for. We're here to critique. That's what the media does.
You know, just sit on my media armchair right here and be like, this is what they did wrong. This is what you did wrong, $1 billion company or $1 trillion company or whatever.
Because I mean, I'm sure they're proud of those things. The same thing, all of their environmental pushes that took up a huge portion of the event. Honestly,
I think that was honestly deserved with like what they've been leading up to in years. Like, I still laugh at the one event that you're reacting to, where I think it was Lisa was on the roof and they never showed her getting off the roof. And that was a whole environmental push of like, look at all these solar panels that we have on Apple Park that like we're trying to be sustainable and all that. But it was just hilarious. Like, I guess what I'm trying to get is that is more deserved in the building up of it, and then flouting it with the Apple Watch line of being like, hey, these
carbon neutral.
Yeah, these are carbon neutral, even though there's probably some carbon credits being thrown in there. It's as carbon neutral as they can get right now, and they're pushing to do more. And I think the sketch kind of framed it decently well, even though it was pretty funny with Octavia Spencer. Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny.
I was not expecting to see her play a character in the middle of a
I wasn't expecting Tim Cook in a skit. I thought that was pretty intense. Like the one with him putting the M1 chip in the iPad, haha, funny. It's actually,
that was amazing.
It's not some secret spy, it's Tim Cook. But actually having him at the table and like him just looking in like shock of like, are we gonna be okay, team? Like, that was great. I think they need to put him.
I need more Tim Cook acting.
Yeah. Just like put these CEOs into these acting situations where of course they don't have the expertise, because of course they're being a CEO, not an actor. And like, just get their genuine, either try get them to react in the way that you want, or just get their genuine reaction, because that sells it for me, because that gives me the memes and like just the funny banter with friends, but then also just like gets me more attentive to the situation It's all just because it's an environmental push on a product or their product lines in general. But that was probably my favorite
I
part
almost feel
of the
bad
whole
for them.
entire event. You think so?
Oh yeah.
You feel a little bit
Well,
bad?
I feel like their efforts towards the environment are genuine. I know not everybody probably agrees with me on that. A lot of people think this is just marketing. This is just um, what's it called? Fluff or greenwashing. There's all kinds of terms
Mm,
people have, or people. What I notice a lot when you get into environmental discussions, even if they are sometimes fairly simple, of like, hey, if you use recycled materials, there's less mining that has to take place, and there's less emissions. And if you put out more renewable energy sources, you don't have to emit as many emissions. Even when you say that, you still get people who argue. They're like, well, not technically when you factor in blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, Apple's putting all this effort, all this money towards something that, I mean, really, it doesn't affect the end product all that much. Like, it doesn't. I don't think personally very many people are going to go out and buy a Series 9 or an Ultra 2 merely because they saw that it's carbon neutral. Oh, cool. It's good for the planet. I guess I'll buy one. I just,
hmm
most people are probably going to roll their eyes and say, yeah, right, you're a big company. You don't care about the environment. I don't believe you. It doesn't matter how convincing your argument is. So that makes me wonder, like, okay, well, is the intended effect of marketing this to us and showcasing, hey, everyone, look how good we are for the environment? But if they get all this backlash and controversy surrounding it, does it serve a purpose for their PR? I mean, I would hope they would do it out of the kindness of their heart, but like if the press around it continues to be negative, do you think they'll continue including it anyway?
They might lean back or lean away from it a little bit more. But to be fair, like
Mm-hmm.
I guess Apple would care, but free press is free press, right? Like they're getting their name
Yeah, I
out
guess
there
we're talking
about
about it.
like we're talking about it. People are asking, is Samsung going to be doing this at their events, or is Google going to be doing this at their events? Like, I guess from what I've seen online, and which I haven't been online too much, but I've seen some of that. But if not, then okay, maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'm in some weird niche of the internet. But even so, I think you kind of just have to take, not to overlap with EV too much, but just take the approach that kind of Tesla has, where they've made these cars, and yeah, maybe a lot of people want to get an electric car because they want to be more sustainable in their transportation needs and all that in some ways. Or there's a
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of people out there that just want a fast car that like
Yeah.
does crazy 0 to 60s, and the
Right.
Tesla's just perfect for that because it's an electric car and those have a better 0 to 60. So I guess in the way of like what Apple's doing, I think a better way to maybe frame it is just switch over to it, release some really cool designs that are recycled in a way. Like what comes to mind again, overlapping with EV, is Volvo with the EX30 compact car that they're coming out with soon. They
Oh
have an
yeah, yeah.
option where it's just recycled material and it actually looks good. Like I would opt for it because it
Mm,
looks good, and it's not because like, oh, it's sustainable. I want to make this car as sustainable as possible. It's like, no, it looks neat with the cool like plastic specks and
right.
like the headboard and all that. Like I don't care. That looks great.
Making desirable recycled designs. I guess they're
Yes.
kind of doing that with the sport bands with the plastic,
Chunks.
ocean plastic in it, chunks. I don't know. I didn't care for the look, but it's cool that they can make that at least. That's
hmm
good.
I
It's
think just making
possible.
it look good should be their aim with the sustainable push. Is
Hmm.
like, who cares about whether it's sustainable or not? Because most people don't, but they should. But that's just our world, is that we don't really care too much about
Right.
sustainability. But thankfully, there are some companies that do put a focus on it, like Apple. I think a good way to sell it and make people want to buy these bands that are sustainably made is make them more desirable in design, and then make the ones that are less
Mm.
desirable in design, if you have to, with the non-sustainable version of it, like, oh, it's a leather band or whatever like that. Like it's just regular. Like if you want that, you can get it. It's an option, but
Hmm.
otherwise, we're not gonna. Maybe they can offshoot it to another company like Hermes or whoever else, and then
Yeah,
they can say we don't actually make
that
it.
was
This
funny.
company makes it. Yeah, right. I think
I saw that.
that was the one thing that I kind of scoffed at in the uh, Apple Watch portion of the event. Is they're like, and the SE is technically zero emissions if you get it with this specific band. I'm like, why say that, or like why do that? Like you got so far with the Series 9, you got so far with the Ultra. Why cut it short with the SE, which is already cutting it short? Like
What
this
is that one band doing?
right
They're pulling this one watch band out of the oil well
straight from
out in the
petroleum.
ocean.
It's all straight
We have
petroleum.
recycled plastic ocean or baby seal leather sport band. It feels great, but it's a little bit worse for the environment. You should just be aware of that.
This was made by 3 baby seals. Every time you buy one of these bands, 3 more baby seals die. Except they
You
don't.
could picture, like, you know how they have the real minimal, clean, carbon neutral icon on the side of the box with the green leaves. Then they have one with the little baby seal face on the side.
This is what you bought.
Yeah, this is what it took. There's 3 little seal icons. No, but
It's like,
I guess that's
instead of like, you know how like it's ratings like a circle or half circle or 4 circles or 5. It's just like 3.5 baby seals or 2.5 baby seals.
the environmental rating, pretty much. But I mean, seeing them remove leather and say we're not going to use leather anymore, and then go around and have their partners still sell leather, I guess is why people have a harder time appreciating it. Like, okay, good on you, Apple, good job. It's something that doesn't get a ton of sympathy, I guess, from the masses, because most people, when they see a big rich company, are just kind of like, well, you should be doing that anyway. Why did it take you so long to get to this point?
Right.
You know, so it's hard for people to be impressed or wowed by it. You notice in all the tech videos that recap the event, no one really talks about the environment. They'll just kind of skip that part. You don't need to know that. Let's move on. So
let's talk about the 15s.
Yeah.
And how they're so much better than the 14s. But I would say overall with that portion of the event, I was thoroughly entertained with just like the creative process that they went through with the skit, and then also explaining how, maybe not how per se down to the nitty gritty, but like a nice general overview of how it's zero emissions and all that, with taking this product to it and how they're going to carry it over to other products. I think that's probably where my mind's going now, is like the iPhone 5C level of like how cheap and sustainable can you get with the product? Like how many corners can you cut but also be complex in sustainability, to where like it doesn't cost too much to make this, but also it's not hurting the environment either, in which something like a plastic like iPhone 16 or 17 would just be hilarious to me. But like if it means zero emissions for that product line, I'd understand. I'd maybe get it. Just
Snazzy Labs would be excited. He's the one online saying everything should be, we need plastic iPhones again. He doesn't like metal on the phones and stuff.
The 5C was Series 5. The iPhone 5 family was probably just one of the hardest hitting iPhone years in both creativity and adoption. Like so many changes happened that year that like it's just a memorable time in just tech in general, of like, oh yeah, that's when
it's our first biometric.
Yeah, and then people outside of AT&T, and I think maybe Sprint, maybe it's just AT&T, were able to get iPhones and use them, because I remember being on Verizon, finally being able to get a 5S because you weren't able to before. And it was either do I get the 5S or the 5C? And I'd like that, again, that choice of like, do I get this one or that one, like the S or the C? And like the only trade-off is just, do I want metal or plastic? That's something that I'm looking forward to in like future iPhones. But I guess that kind of segues us more over to the iPhones per se, unless you want to talk on the drastic changes to the Ultra 2.
Yeah, the Ultra 2 is actually a game changer. I can't believe we almost missed it. It's actually the first Apple Watch follow-up where there is literally zero discernible design changes between generations. Like normally on even when reviewing a Series 8 or a Series 9, there's technically a way to know which one if you take it off and look at the little ring on the back. It'll say Series 8 versus Series 9. Even though the rest of it's identical, there's a little engraving differences. The Ultra, they didn't do that. So it's literally identical. Like if you don't boot up the Apple Watch Ultra, you'd be able to technically sell it to someone and they'd have no way of knowing if it's the Ultra 2 or the Ultra 1 unless they booted it up, went into settings and looked at the model number or something. But there's no physical way to detect from the outside. So that's a big deal. No. But
I'd say it's a big deal for like if you're trying. Well, oh no, I tried getting a refurbished Ultra Gen 1.
2.
And instead I got a
Gen 1 should be the cheaper one, right?
So no, that's what I'm getting at. Like, woe is me being me wanting to get Apple Watch Ultra. And then I order it from eBay, and I'm like, wait a second, after booting this up, it's an Ultra 2. I want an Ultra 1 refurbished. Dang it.
You're saying you specifically wanted the older one.
Right.
Dang it. They scammed me with the more expensive watch.
This has lower cycles. Dang it.
The last few times we talked, I remember you debating that. I remember you saying you were thinking about getting an Ultra, but you didn't want to pay full price for one because you knew if you just waited a little bit longer, you could get one for cheaper. Are you remotely interested now that the first gens should be cheaper?
Yeah, I still have my Series 5.
Yeah.
It's no surprise. I am interested still. Mr. No Watch. Unfortunately, yeah, I still haven't gone on to getting one yet. I have thought about it on this road trip because we've done some hikes where it's like, oh, it'd be nice to have that GPS monitoring of like where we were and all that. Because there was one that I did where it was really cool because like I did the whole workout thing of like doing a hike or outdoor walk and all that, and then I was able to see afterward the route, but I wasn't able to really see the route during the hike that I was on easily. Maybe you can, but I wasn't able to discern it through the phone or the watch easily until the hike was over. And it would be nice to have on the watch just to see, oh, that's where we were, this is where we are in relation to where we were about half an hour ago or something like that. But still haven't gotten around to it. Still interested. I haven't seen it go up on the certified refurbished page yet, so I still am waiting.
Are you waiting till it's on that page? You don't want to get it.
I'm waiting for the official Apple Watch Ultra refurbished. For some reason,
your 3% cash back.
Yeah, something like that. Probably.
Okay.
It would be nice.
We'll keep an eye out.
Should
be soon.
I'm not in any rush at all. And unfortunately, the Ultra 2 wasn't a big push to where everyone's returning their Ultra 1s, so that way Apple can start up the refurbished page. Instead, it was very much like an S tier for the Ultra 2. So it's like, okay, well, whatever. I guess I could just wait longer and have my, is it like 88% battery life now?
Really? That's pretty good considering it's a Series 5.
Or maybe 78. I forget. I need to go into the settings.
That makes more sense.
It doesn't last throughout the whole day. Like if I get up at 5 a.m. and then let's just say I'm still out and about around like 8 or 9 p.m., it's dead. So, I need to charge it wherever I'm at in the middle of the day, just so that way I can continue to the evening if I'm doing something evening where I want my watch to tell me the time or receive messages or anything else. So it is kind of a bummer.
That's usually when I draw the line of like, okay, is this watch worth wearing anymore? It's like if it's dying on me every day, that's when I feel less push to wear it. But I guess that's most of the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it would be nice to... The nice selling part about the Ultra is, like, you could potentially wear it for, like, 2 days straight without having to charge it.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm still going to probably use it like my Series 5, so that's what kind of puts me in the mindset of I don't need the Ultra right now because the Series 5 is still doing what I do with the Ultra. It just has a cool design factor and has a few more neat little things for hiking and other stuff that I don't normally
do. Button.
And the action button. It took me this long. 77% maximum capacity for battery health on this Series 5. So
okay, that makes sense.
It's dropping over time. Age. Yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But otherwise, was it the new
I'm
Ultra
at
2 has
87.
an oh, that's not bad. The new Ultra 2 has a cool infographic screen on the front now. The new oh goodness, what do they call it? Do you remember the name of the new
I feel like Chat GPT could name watch faces. Info graphic solar modular,
Probably.
photonic
Photonic
peacekeeping. I don't know.
Photonic what was the name of the event? It was Wonderlust. Photonic Wonderlust.
Wonderlust. Yeah, they always have weird names like that.
Mm-hmm.
Numerals duo.
That's bordering
That's
on
always...
Surface Duo.
Ugh.
Right.
Yeah, they can't do that.
But yeah, did you want to add something else besides before we get into the iPhones in regards to my reactions on that part of the program as the old people are calling it these days?
Just to check if there's any disagreement, because I think we feel fairly similar about a lot of this, but do you agree that the finger tap thing is totally possible to add on older watches? Or could you
I've seen you do it,
their...
and I've seen other people talk about it. So it is possible to do it on previous gens of Apple Watch, but it's through the accessibility features. I think MKBHD reported it saying like you can do it, but it's a lot slower than what it is on Series 9. I don't know how slow it is.
I mean, it's
You've
not
got
the same
experience.
feature, but it's purely software. Is my point. Is like
Right.
that you get that little pinch icon in the top of the screen, and then when you do that, it ends the call, stops the timer, whatever. And my whole thesis was that they could have added that little excessive. They could have added the new Series 9 feature to older Apple Watches, but they realized they needed new features for the new watches, so they didn't, which always makes me upset. I always get mad when it's like, we found a new software feature, but don't give it to everybody. That's weird. We should just pretend that we need the Series 9 chip for it to work. And I didn't I don't buy that. I was curious if you bought that so we could have some banter, but it sounds like you don't buy it.
I don't buy it, no. I didn't buy
Okay.
anything this whole year or this event, but no,
enough.
I think it's really cool being able to use that for whatever you want to, and like having that
It's
as a
kinda
shortcut,
gnarly.
and also
Yeah.
applying it to what's it called, your focuses throughout the day. So if you have different focuses depending on the hour, it could change whatever action you want to do based on what time of the day it is. So that way, like, oh, at
That's true.
noon I do the tapping thing, and that's when like it cues on my music for like running in the middle of the day for some reason. Or in the evening, double tapping it turns on the TV or something like that. Like that'd be neat. But yeah, I think it's just one of those accessibility features that has been graduated to a normal feature for the watch that I think is great as an add-on, and you don't have to dig through the menu to find it. Now it's instead of 5 layers deep, it's 2 layers deep.
It's 2 layers deep if you buy a new watch. It's very easy to access.
Right. I'm grateful that it's there, I should say. But in regards to whether it's like game changing or like it's I don't know.
A deal maker.
It's definitely not a deal maker unless you want an excuse to get the Series 9. Then I'd say there you go. Easier way to like tap your hands and your fingers for certain things that you want to do, whether it's fist clenching or tapping with the index, or maybe it would be interesting if, I don't know if it does, if you're able to do different fingers and the watch could know what fingers you're tapping. So it's like almost like spatial computing, where like you're able to do a certain
Vision
action.
Pro might know. Yeah.
Right. Probably with
I
the
could
cameras
see
that's
it.
got on the bottom.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I'm just looking for any kind of drama we can.
Well, here's the drama that I'll
That's-
bring up then. Why are you wearing an Apple
Okay.
Watch right now?
Oh, okay. We'll finally address it. Well, there's been, sadly, enough times where people are trying to get a hold of me, and I was too in my my tech nirvana where I'm disconnected. I'm going, I don't need to stay in touch. And then people are like, where are you? I'm like, okay, sorry. So I'm still I'm still trying to find a buyer for it. I'm still not fully committed to it. I just happen to be wearing it today, but this is the first day I've worn it since probably 5-6 weeks ago. So I'm convinced that
Whatever you say.
I'm not going to do a video on it, so I might as well make my peace here because that would be stupid.
I've ended my sobriety.
I kept wearing my Apple Watch. I just make a video every time I put my watch on.
He did it. It's like when Markiplier has to pass gas or whatever, like on Twitter when it trends. It's like you. He put it back on. He took it off. He put it back on.
I am purely doing it just to keep in touch with people. I will say after not wearing it for a while, I got used to not wearing it, and now when I put it on, it feels weird. I've gotten back to the point where I'm like, ooh, it's kind of heavy too. It's kind of this bulky thing, and
I forget you have a bigger one. I've got the small one, so it feels like nothing.
Oh yeah, well, and it's steel too. The steel ones are pretty heavy.
Oh, you poor soul. That's what they should make titanium. The watches.
You poor soul. I know. What an idea. But yeah, I still don't like watchOS 10. You know, I put it on this morning for the first time in a while because I was just like, okay, I was going out somewhere and I wanted to make sure that if someone needed me, I was available. And
be jelly.
No.
I'm still.
Have you not updated to watchOS?
I have not updated the watchOS, but I have updated iOS and macOS. So I'm on Sonoma. I'm on iOS 15, 16, whatever it is.
17.
17. Some number in the teens.
I'd be amazed if you were on 15. That would be more impressive. You like found a way to downgrade.
I don't think I've updated the iPad yet, but yeah, watch. I'm like, I like how this user interface is, and I don't want to go to. You have to scroll or press the side button instead of the crown.
The side button
things.
For control center. Yeah, it happened again this morning where I was like, oh, where's the setting? And I swipe up, and then it's the stupid widgets, and I'm like, God, I'm still not adjusted after all this time. I really don't like it. I've tried to get used to it. I tried to force myself. I'm usually somewhat of a futurist that can like get on to a new standard and get on to a whatever. If they change the port, I'm never against it. I'm always like, cool, new port's better. I like it. Let's go. Old port sucks. But this is something that I just think watchOS team just. Well, my theory is that they basically figured out how to make the best watch, but then Tim was entering the room and was like, but you got to do something else now you got to make it better. And they're like, how do we make it better? And he's like, I don't know, you just got to do it and figure that out.
These two things aren't too dissimilar now then, being the iPad and the Apple Watch, where the software teams
pretty much
are struggling while the hardware teams are like, oh, we're about to cook some fire here.
Yeah, I get more annoyed with a product and it pushes me away and I want to start to abandon it whenever they run out of new features for hardware, so they start software locking things to the new model. That's what they did with the iPad, and that annoyed me, even though it didn't affect me personally. It's not like I needed the Apple Pencil hover feature, but I was just mad that they acted like you needed the M2 chip for it. I was like, no, you do not. Shut up. So I sold off my old iPad, and then as soon as they're like, now you can double tap with the new S9 chip, I'm like, no, you can't. I'm selling my watch. I'm done with that. Like, you guys are out of ideas.
So I guess
you figured out.
Since we're taking this tangent right now, I'll take it a little bit further. If you sell that watch, there's not a replacement watch that you have that you'll put on then? Or is there a watch at least out there, maybe on certified refurbished, or maybe one in the future that you're anticipating that you would maybe pick up, like a refurbished Ultra or potentially refurbished Ultra 2 for some reason?
My issue, while I respect your admiration for the Ultra, and I'm thankful that there are so many people out there who like the Ultra, I seriously see them all over the place. It kind of shocks me.
I haven't seen any.
I was like, really? Everybody? Well, you're in the middle of no.
Thanks.
I mean, I'm in the middle of nowhere too, but when
I'm just more in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, but I still, whenever I'm in public, I see like random people with Ultras, and I'm like, you do not need that. I can tell Like, you're not a hiker. You're not utilizing that dual GPS frequency. You just wanted a longer battery life. But I'm just everywhere I look, I'm like, wow, everybody's spending $800 on this watch. This is kind of crazy. But my issue with it is I don't like the look and I don't like the feel. To me, it's just a little too big and it gets caught on more things. And honestly, putting this back on is making me go, geez, even the steel one's kind of bulky. So if I did sell this one and downgrade it to something, it would probably, I don't know if it's still available, but I would like to find a ceramic Series 5.
So the one that my wife has, the one
price.
that you recommended her, is the one that you'd go to then.
No, that's a steel one.
I like how you remember this and I don't.
This is all I know, Mike. I don't know anything else. You have all of this engineering knowledge and all of this real world, like, I don't know how to operate chainsaws, how to work on,
I guess kind of
how to cut down trees, how to hook up a trailer. You have all of this real world knowledge, and I just know everybody's tech. That's my thing. So she has a steel Series 5. I want the one with the ceramic chassis, which is like, it looks like AirPods. It's like bright white.
I remember now.
I reviewed one earlier, and it was nice, but I couldn't find a buyer for my Series 7. I still can't. So at this point, I would rather go watchless, just because I know I can get by without it. But I guess if I'm trying to stay in touch with people who need me, I'd probably, maybe I'd go with a SE, something cheap, or I don't know. I wouldn't care about the looks as much. It would purely just be for keeping in contact. It wouldn't be for anything else, not fall detection or car crash detection or any of that stuff. But
do you think maybe there's room in the Apple Watch ecosystem for a more slimmer design, something a little bit like, not like the Power Glove from Nintendo, but something a little bit more sleeker than the Power Glove, but still a watch? So I guess more like
a whole glove.
Like a data wrist pad or something like that, like something, look, this but smaller.
There's
like,
there's
what's
talk that they're doing that.
What's your dream Apple Watch? I guess this is how curious I am now about, like, what would it take for you to keep a watch on your wrist that is a smartwatch that is probably Apple? I don't think you'd downgrade to Fitbit. Sorry, Fitbit.
No.
Not saying that you're bad, but
I wouldn't.
Just
they're bad.
Okay. I used to have a Fitbit. That thing kind of broke apart after a year and a half.
Me too. I didn't like it. I didn't care for it.
So, like, what is your dream Apple Watch then?
My dream, for one, it would be to fix the software. Just keep it on watchOS 9 somehow. Just watchOS 10 wasn't worth it. None of the changes I care that much about. I like this design. I'm a fan of this design language, but I don't like steel. I don't understand why Apple has this obsession with the higher end products being made with more expensive materials, because it usually just comes with more drawbacks. And I'm like, just make it aluminum. Aluminum's fine. It's cheap. It's efficient. It's a good thermal, what do you call it? It's good at dissipating heat.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's light, and it doesn't collect that many fingerprints. You know, this thing looks clean. You don't have to wipe it off all the time. So I would love, I don't even need it to be aluminum. I would like this design with this display and this size and everything. I don't need an action button. Digital crown, watchOS 9, normal side button. But I would like this design made out of this ceramic white material that they used to make. The Series 5 was the last one they did out of ceramic. You know, the toilet porcelain Apple Watch is, in my opinion, the best looking one. And that one I would... Oh, and of course, ProMotion. You got to put 120 hertz on.
Oh, of course.
So
it needs to melt your eyes.
Drew's,
or in a good way,
There's Drew's dream watch, I guess. And it runs macOS.
Oh, that too.
You dock it with the...
Everything. How you make anything better. Runs macOS when you dock it nearby a screen. Could be
If I was at Home Depot and they're like, here's a refrigerator, it runs macOS, I'd be like, really? Interesting. I'd be a little bit more influenced by that refrigerator.
I've been on a whole rabbit hole on, like, what's it called? The 2-in-1 washer dryer units, and which we'll save that for another podcast where I can get more
I
in depth
need to
with
hear
it.
more about this.
But
But just don't put the A17 Pro chip in there because then your food's gonna melt inside.
right. So I guess that leads more into the iPhones, right?
Transition.
The sensor got bigger again, and you've got
Which sensor?
the camera sensor, but you've got the regular 15, obviously blue.
I have the latest, not greatest, the cheapest 15, and that's it. That's what I've been rocking. And sorry, were you gonna ask a question or should I just go off?
Literally go off. My only addition was that we were gonna get one. My wife was because she has a 12.
You said you were thinking about getting one.
The funniest little story about that is like we were tossing it back and forth before. I think it was after the event. No, it was either before or after the Apple event. We were tossing back and forth of whether she should get one or not. I think it was after the Apple event, and she's like, "I don't think I need one." Like, yeah, the 12
Good
has
for
some
her.
glitches and all that, and it is annoying, and I'm now full on storage, but that just means I need to clear out some screenshots and all that. I should be fine with it.
You need the 12 terabyte iCloud plan, I think is what you're saying, right?
We don't pay for any
$60 a
iCloud
month.
storage. But what was literally hilarious, literally, like I will use this word misappropriately or appropriately in this context. We turned on the radio after this conversation, and it was a news station talking about how France found that the iPhone 12 is emitting more radiation than what was what was reported by Apple or what was expected. It was abnormal amounts of radiation coming out of the iPhone 12. And we both looked at each other.
I remember that.
Both looked at her phone, and she's like, maybe I should get the 15 regular. And I'm like,
Wow.
You have a radiation brick in your pocket.
That's incredible timing.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
amazing.
we still have radiation brick. I guess I don't know if I still am waiting on some of the findings from this.
But it's only if you're in France.
Apparently, it's nowhere else.
They didn't have that report come out of any other country. So it's specifically if you're in France with an iPhone 12, you're in trouble.
What are the French people doing with their baguettes and their iPhones? How irradiated are you baguettes? So we're still kind of on the fence about getting the 15, and unfortunately, with like the massive draw.
What color would she get if she did get one?
Here is the funny thing: she was going to get the pink.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
See, my wife, when she saw the new 15s after the whole live stream was done and we were ready to, close off, I said, "Look, hon, there it is." She's like, "Oh, that pink looks good," which is important. That's amazing to me because you know how Louise doesn't care about phones at all.
Right.
None of this stuff.
Her commenting on an iPhone is
she's
newsworthy.
Like, yeah, she's always like, "I'm good with my phone. I don't need a new one." So to get any sort of compliment from her, I was like, wow, it must be pretty good. And it's interesting to hear your wife was interested in the same one. It's Barbie phone, basically.
It is. She did. Her thing is like she wants to change it up now every single time she gets a new phone, something different. And for context, if y'all don't
she already has a pink iPhone.
She has the salmon iPhone. But
pink, you mean? I think you said you meant to say pink just now, but you said salmon.
It is the 12 regular is a salmon, isn't it? Even though they call it product red, but it is salmon. I think I even made a joke about it on Twitter. But
oh yeah, you went to work for that. You made like a fish photoshopped in with the 12 design.
Probably, but for some reason she looked at all the colors and she's like, the pink. I'm like, not even you don't even want to consider like a pro, and she's like, I don't need a pro. I just need a regular one.
She's right.
And I'm like,
I agree with her.
Probably, but at the same time, something that what has also been pushing her in this case is the fact that on this road trip that we're on, It's my 14 Pro versus her 12 regular and taking photos.
Yeah.
And every single time, like, we both take the same photo of, like, the same sunset or something like that, she's like, let me see your photo, and then brings up her phone, and she's like, see, why does yours look so much better than mine? I'm like, well, it's a Pro phone, it's bigger sensors, and it's a later version than yours. It's the 14 rather than the 12. And she's like, I want a better... My photo looks, like, bad. It looks terrible, to put it nicely in her terms. Like, I want better photos. I want a new phone. If it means that I get better photos. I'm like, well, you'll probably get that with the regular 12 because it's, I think, using the same sensors. Did I say 12? 15. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. The sky is full
There's
of
a lot of numbers.
Pigs and not clouds now.
The 15 is running iOS 17, but it has the A16 chip, and that's on the 3nm architecture. Yeah, I know. It's a headache.
Head exploding over here in the middle of nowhere. The middle of nowhere. Yeah, so
I say hold on to the 12 as long as she can.
We'll see. She wanted to get a whole bunch of nice pictures on this road trip, and we're nearing the end of it.
Yeah. You don't need that.
And I guess we haven't had a need for a new phone yet. But that's probably the phone that she'll go for. Maybe when spring rolls around, when they get a new color, maybe some refurbished ones will come on the market.
That's a good idea. What do you think? I mean, you and all your infinite insider information.
I know everything, of course. That's why I've been gone.
Considering
this 2-month hiatus is just because I invaded Apple, learned all of their info, and can tell you anything about why the iPhone is the best phone on the market right now.
Here's my theory as to why I feel confident about this prediction. With the iPhone 7 in the spring, they did a product red launch. iPhone 8 even got a product red launch. And then the XR launched with a product red option from the beginning, I think.
I think
Can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it did. And then the iPhone 11 definitely had product red. The 12 had salmon, but they called it product red. The 13 had red. The 14 had 2 red. It was just super bright. This is the first year that on launch in a while they don't have a product red option, which is why I'm like, there's got to be a product red coming in the spring. There's just such an obvious
the Red Cross wouldn't let
lacking
them
of
not
colors.
At this point. They need more money.
Yeah, the charity's like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, you have enough. You're fine.
You had
no more charities,
iPhone
more Mother
7
Nature.
through 14 of charity work for you. You're fine.
I think the 7 was the first red iPhone, now that I think about it. There wasn't a red 5C. And there definitely wasn't a red 6 or 6. Yeah, I think it was. So I'm convinced that in the spring we're going to get a product red 15, 15 Plus, maybe a deep red 15 Pro. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think I'm with your wife. I mean, in terms of
you're with my wife. How dare you, sir?
I worded that perfectly, didn't I?
Oh, obviously.
But every time I go back to the 11, I still feel like, not much has changed. Especially in all these Twitter side-by-side shootouts with the cameras. Like, the 15 does have an incredible camera, especially if you do pixel peeping and you pinch in. It just captures so much detail, and it's awesome that they brought the same 48-megapixel sensor in your phone into the entry model phone now. It's great, and I've filmed several YouTube videos with the 15, but still, that's more of a video argument, I would say, in terms of just pull out the phone, take a picture. Yeah, the iPhone 11 is still pretty great, and I believe the 12 should be at least better than that. Maybe it's not as good as your 14 Pro, so she's comparing it to the best of the best and going, what the heck? But yeah, it's a great phone, though. This is the first time in years that I can think of where, like, the entry model is actually great. It's, like, worth considering for the masses.
I think you were a fan of the 13 regulars, right? I think that's the year that they botched the Pros.
Yeah.
Because
the 13 regulars were good. I guess most of my attention was on the 13 Pros because it was the first time we had 120 hertz, but it was just they weren't that different from the 12s.
Yeah. Maybe it was the 12s. I forget. Some year. It was between the 11s and 14s, but not the 11
I did
or
rock
the
a 12
14.
mini for a year.
Or
So
maybe
that
no, maybe
I
it was
really
the
loved.
11. Maybe it was the 11 that you're saying that the pros weren't the best, but the regulars were. But
Well, the 11 was a decent surprise because they dropped the price, which no one saw coming. Apple rarely does that, but they improved on the 10R and decreased the price. So it was like better phone, less money. That's a win. I mean, it was a nice phone, but the 11 Pros I still remember crediting a lot to because the battery life got like so much better. They like doubled the battery or something crazy. And
cries internally at my 11 Pro dying.
yeah, I was gonna say it's funny how that's a moving target. Every year we're like, when the 11 Pro comes out, wow, the battery lasts forever. 3 years later, this battery sucks. It's not long enough. I need twice as long as this phone. Now everyone's like, wow, the battery life is so good on my 15 Pro, and then a couple of years will go by. Oh my god, the battery
I don't think
sucks
it's
on
even
the
a couple
15
of years.
Pro.
There's already some people saying like they haven't had amazing battery life in terms of just like duration of using the product
Yeah,
for one cycle, not specifically hundreds of cycles. Some
they
people
need the
are
Doogie
saying,
phone.
"Oh my goodness, do you still have the Doogie phone?"
I do. It's still here
Oh, thank goodness.
for some reason.
If you ever sold that thing, I would be a wreck. Like, why?
Really?
Why get rid of that thing? That thing is beautiful. I'm not joking.
Beautiful phone.
Giant.
I love how many
chevron
people
light.
appreciate that phone.
It's so great.
I show it to people that aren't in the tech space, and they're always far more interested in it than the new iPhone. I show someone the new iPhone 15, and they're like, "Okay, what, like, what
It's a phone.
changed? It
What
looks,
happened?
it's a phone. It looks the same." But then I show someone the Doogie, and they're like, "Oh, that's awesome! I love that. That's so cool." And I was like, maybe Doogie's onto something here.
Maybe
This poor
iPhone needs
company,
to
they did
regress
not
in a certain
expect.
way. It's not actually regression; it's progression by making the
That's gonna be the
iPhone
headline. Pro
Ultra or whatever.
Gression.
I don't know.
They'll do pro in white text and then Gression in like Wonderlust font.
Oh, there you go.
With the sand. But there was talk of an Ultra coming next year.
Maybe
So my
that's
thought
it.
process was, if there's a 16 Ultra, could you envision it getting like super chunk, like super thick? It looks kind of like the Apple Watch Ultra. It's like it's got the flat top and the bulbous bottom and the weird looking, what is it called? Brutalism? It's just all utility focused. Buttons everywhere.
The
Colored buttons
Cybertruck
all over
iPhone.
the thing. Yeah, like it made me think some people out there probably just want the biggest battery possible. So seeing how the Apple Watch Ultra has sold so well, I get the feeling that if they make a 16 Ultra, it would probably sell disappointingly well. Like you'd be shocked how many 14-year-olds would be walking around with 16 Ultras, these giant brick phones. Like, we fit 10,000 milliamp hours in this thing. There's no more camera bump because the whole thing is just a bump now. Just make a fat, thick, douchey looking iPhone that just lasts way longer and has an absurdly good camera.
I think it's possible. It mainly just. When do you think that they're going to change the sensor? Because we've already had
Which one?
the front or the rear camera sensor. Basically, the
There's three.
the stovetop camera suite.
Oh, like the design. The
Yeah.
design of the.
I guess maybe
Yeah.
I'm saying that wrong.
That's a
with
good
camera
question.
sensor. The camera suite in the
No, I get
orientation
what
they
you're
have it. Like we've had it since the 11. Start off as
Yeah.
oh my goodness, they just added another camera sensor. That's hilarious. But then now it's just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger to where when I was, I guess, kind of a spoiler, but not really. I got to visit Randy over in Virginia, and
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
we got to line up my 11 Pro, my wife's 12, no, his 12 mini, and then
Oh, you took a group shot. I hope
think
you took pictures.
someone had a 13, and then I had my 14. No, you know what? He had his 13 mini. My wife had my 12. That's what it was. It was the 11
Randy
Pro.
has a 13. He has
um,
two 13.
I guess so. 11 Pro, 12 regular, 13 mini, and then
Mhm.
my 14 Pro. It was just funny seeing the camera suite sensors, size of the lenses, increase over
Oh, yeah.
time, ridiculously to
It's
where
getting
like
obnoxious.
the 11 was just like, haha, funny, and now it's like, oh, this is becoming the stove.
Yeah. No, even on the regular
Oh my
15,
goodness, it's huge.
it's still pretty chunk. Like the wobble is very much there. So far, leaks and rumors have not pointed to any um, drastic redesign with the camera bump, which is a bummer because I never liked this one, to be honest. I remember when it first came out and I was like, why would they put it in that arrangement? And then once it actually came out and we saw how they color it differently, I was like, okay, it doesn't look as ugly as I thought. Like it's tolerable, but it's fine. It doesn't hurt anything. But then it started becoming more painful every year as it got bigger, wider, thicker, and I was like, okay. I just want them to copy the pixel design because I'm sick of the wobble. I don't like the
Mm-hmm.
on the desk when you're using it.
I think that one still wobbles a little bit, but I did see it in the wild the other day. I'm like, oh, that's a nice looking phone.
Yeah,
Caught me
I
off
see
guard.
him. I know.
It's like, oh
There's a
wow.
friend of mine that has one, and yeah, it's not a bad design because as years go on, we put bigger and bigger lenses and bigger sensors, but we still have this little MagSafe ring we have to accommodate for, which I believe is why they killed MagSafe Duo, is because the bump had probably gotten so big.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it barely works on your phone with the 14 Pro, and then the 15 Pro pushes the camera bump even because the bezels are thinner. It pushes the camera bump even more towards the center. So I haven't seen anyone test it. I
I'm
was
sure
waiting for
someone
those articles
has,
to come out,
but
but it probably barely fits, and now it's
I
like
don't think
not
it even
sitting
does.
flush, caseless, and with the case, it's probably even worse. So
I think all it
it's
does
like
is just increase the amount of thermal loss or just heat loss in the charging process, just because it's not
right,
close enough.
it's more inefficient.
Where it's like a half handshake. Like you got like a couple fingers off at this point with this handshake. And it's just like
it's
it's
not complete.
not even worth it at this point where you've got like three fingers
Charges
not making
slower.
contact. Yeah. So
So if you're gonna put more lenses and more sensors on a phone, I would not be pushing them towards the center because we've got a coil and a magnet ring there. I would be pushing them more this way.
mm-hmm.
But I guess maybe Apple has this thing about, the original iPhone had the camera in the top, left corner when you're looking at it from the back. And they want it to still be there so that it looks, uniquely iPhone or whatever. I don't care. If it's going to be a bump, I'm going to ask it to be symmetrical in some way so that you can have bigger sensors, because I'm sure Apple wants to eventually put in 3 or 4, I don't know, 48 megapixel sensors. Right now there's only one, and then the other one's 12, but next year it's rumored to be 248, so that's going to make it bigger. And I'm like, okay, for one, there's not this big, everyone online keeps claiming that there's some huge advantage by putting the lenses equal distant from each other. That's baloney. I don't believe it. For one, if you get out a ruler and measure, they are not equal distant from each other. On the more recent ones, in the 11 Pros, they were equal, but ever since I think the 13 Pro or the 14 Pro, the one that sticks out is further apart from the.
I'm looking
the two on
at it
top
right
of each
now
other.
on I've got my 14 Pro filming me right now. It's sitting on top of the MacBook, and you can easily see it where like, yeah, the top two, I guess it would be the side two if you're holding the phone like a regular phone. That are
the ones that are perpendicular.
Yeah, that share the same line of symmetry with the side of the phone. They have a good, I mean, you kind of touched into something that I wanted to add on to as well, with the ability to record spatial video or whatever they're calling it for the Vision Pro stuff. I think that's a great idea to utilize the fact that the iPhone can do that with its distant, or the way that its lenses are distanced from one another. You can utilize that, and that's probably.
I still don't get it.
I
don't understand how it's possible.
It's all about how you want to scale. Well, so your eyes are a different distance. Well, they're a distance away from each other, of course, or else
way more than
or
the
else you'd be a
cameras on the
Cyclops.
phone are.
Versus that, it's just how. I'm not an optical physicist. I'm a mechanical engineer, but it's all about scaling. So with at least with spatial computing, or at least with the Vision Pro, you can make anything whatever size. So I'm guessing what they're gaming on is like you can scale it however you want so that it's capturing it one way, and you just have to tweak whatever focal length that you've got there, or how it's processed with the image, and you're able to receive something through your eyes that it's as if you are there in the moment, even though that the distance between your eyes and the distance between these lenses are different. I wouldn't know. I haven't dug deep into that problem myself. I'm sure the engineers at Apple have been doing that for probably at least a couple of years now, just trying to figure out, wait a second, we've got lenses that we can utilize for, like, it's basically like I said, I have goggles. Wait a second, Vision Pro. So I'm sure that this is a problem that, I mean, they've most likely solved at this point and are able to bring it down to like, all right, as long as you've got this spacing of lenses, you could easily just run it through this computational method that we've derived and are able to make it viewable to anyone that has a Vision Pro, and it feels immersive and it doesn't feel jarring where like you're narrow-sighted or whatever, like you have a different spacing between your eyes and it throws you off too much, because that's something that you want to avoid with virtual/augmented reality, is that disconnect, because then that's when you start getting nausea and other stuff. So being able
they're trying to market something that's not easy to market, like some kind of 3D video experience, but the way they're marketing it, I'm sure it won't look the way they're showing, because they always, when they're trying to showcase spatial video, show like this panning shot of like people at the beach and they're like going around them, like so you can see behind them, and I'm like, that's just, it's not possible. So
yeah,
I can understand some kind of 3D video. I don't get how
I would
the
say
iPhone could capture that much more data from it.
This is maybe the tough conundrum that Apple's in now, is like they've realized, oh, we can use this for another product line that we're coming out with, being the Vision Pro. But it means that we either have to move the MagSafe ring down on the phone so that way it can still use MagSafe Duo and other MagSafe products, or we have to change the camera sensor and kind of just either botch the idea of being able to take videos or photos with your phone and being able to upload them to the Vision Pro, or view them through Vision Pro on the Photos app, and which I don't think they want to sacrifice that. So I think they kind of just chose neither, right? Because they didn't move the MagSafe charging ring lower on the phone.
No, they just killed MagSafe Duo and the battery pack.
They just killed off the product line, I guess. They're like, well, let's just kill
that has lightning.
Right.
We were all waiting for USB-C versions of it, and then
nope,
they just killed them off.
Did we get any USB-C versions of accessories besides the AirPods in this event?
We got some new cables that weren't there before,
I guess.
I don't think that's what you meant,
adapter.
But yeah, that's true. We got a Lightning to USB-C adapter, which
for $30.
Was way too expensive. Oh, we got USB-C earpods.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about earpods.
Which everyone keeps telling me they support lossless, which I'm like, what? Really?
Because
I haven't looked up if that's true. It's a wire, but I'm more impressed that like it's a $20 pair of headphones. So I'm kind of surprised that, for one, that kind of headphone probably wouldn't be that good at playing a lossless signal in the first place. But I guess it is it's a pair of Apple headphones, and Apple Music has lossless support and all that. So I'm going to look it up right now and see if it actually says that on the...
If it does...
Yeah, it's $19.
I think you might be getting caught up in the fact that there's so many things that are packed into the AirPods to give it a more immersive noise going through into your ears and all that, where lossless might not require that much per se if there's an actual physical connection. If there's not a physical connection, then it becomes a whole can of worms, or a whole Scrabble tile book that you now have to arrange alphabetically, and like you're missing a few tiles somewhere underneath the chair and some underneath the bed. Someone like it might be a very tough problem to solve wirelessly, but wired it might just be as simple as you just need some wires.
No, I know wired is very simple because all it means is that there's just no compression. We've had wired
signal.
lossless for we've had wired lossless for a very long time. I was just skimming over the web page, and nothing in the product information references lossless. All it says is deep, rich bass tone. So I'm guessing people just are assuming that because there's a wire, it must support lossless playback. But
Meanwhile, the new AirPods with the H2 chip can apparently with Vision Pro.
that was I'm still rolling over exactly how that thing is. Why did they? It's such a bizarre announcement to me. It was like they didn't talk about this.
I don't think they even announced it. It was just more of a form
during
post,
the keynote. They just went during the keynote. I think it was during the part where they finally announced USB-C. They teased it forever. Mm-hmm. They wanted to before we talk about that, let's talk about the new U2 chip. No, not U2. The second generation U1 chip. You can track your friends down. I like that visual though, seeing the friend in the distance. Mm-hmm. I'm waiting for a screen recording of your friend, and you just see the number dropping really quick, and then you pan up, and they're coming at you.
You can make some
you
good
see how
shorts
quickly.
With that.
Yeah, we should try that whenever we see each other again. But
never again.
They wanted to talk all about the brighter display, the better camera, and all that.
It goes.
Oh, and by the way, it's USB-C. They keep you wanting, and then during the USB-C section, they're like, and of course, there's new AirPods that support Type-C as well. And I was like, okay, cool. That's exactly what we thought it would be. The same AirPods as before, just with a new charge case. But then in the live chat, while I'm trying to look for more information, people say the new AirPods Pro support lossless. And I was like, what are you talking about?
They're just second
look
gen.
At the newsroom post.
They're just second gen.
I was like, huh? I thought he was trolling. I thought people were trying to throw me off, they were making stuff up. So I go to the newsroom post, and they have 3 additional paragraphs that were not in the presentation because there wasn't time, I guess. We had to designate more Mother Nature screen time. We couldn't talk more about the headphones, but I thought that would have been perfect. Vision Pro is this new category that they haven't entered yet, but they've announced it, and they hyped it up. And even at the beginning of the presentation, I think Tim was like, let's talk for a minute about Vision Pro. We're excited about Vision Pro. Anyway, let's...
Well, I'm glad that they made some notes of it. They weren't just ignoring it entirely. That they're acknowledging...
All they said was that devs are excited?
No, well...
That's not...
Didn't they also add that they're expecting it to come out in Q1, I think?
Oh, yeah.
2024?
It's on schedule.
It's on schedule?
That was the update.
Yeah.
To me, that's not an update, I guess.
Oh, okay.
To me, that's
For me, it's reaffirming that this product is coming out.
I guess.
We're fully...
Yeah.
We're putting all our efforts towards it, and we're really excited for customers to get it on their eyes.
Yeah, you're gonna say in their hands, but
I'm like, no, not in their hands. It's on their eyes.
They just hold it. We can't wait to put this on your face. That's how they should have worded it. But I still think if you were doing a little intro and you were trying to buy some time before the Apple Watch announcements and the iPhone announcements, that would have been a perfect time to talk about the AirPods. Mm-hmm. And been like, so we have some new updates with Vision Pro thanks to its integrated H2 chip, and this, I would have called it something else. I would have called it AirPods Pro 3. You can now support lossless feedback when using Vision Pro. Sure, it's a little niche, but it's less niche than the carbon neutral stuff. No one cares about that. So I would have thought this would have been a perfect time to explain how it's possible, and preferably, can you explain why it's not possible with an iPhone? Why can't the iPhone support lossless playback, but the AirPods can? We had to find out through a Brian Tong interview after the fact that it's it's this 5 gigahertz frequency that the new H2 chip can support, but the old H2 So now my brain's breaking because I'm like, okay, there's more than one H2 chip. When you say, what kind of chip does it have? And you say H2. Someone has to now ask, which one? Which H2?
H2 Pro Max.
Could they, yeah, could they rebrand it to H2 Pro? Like,
Probably.
I don't know. I thought it was just such a weird thing to not explain and to like drop in the newsroom. So my theory, I want to hear your theory, but my theory is that they're talking about it in the newsroom post to make it seem like they're a bigger deal than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, the headphones themselves are probably not that great at outputting a lossless signal, as in it's not very noticeably different because these are optimized for more compressed file formats. But no one's able to test it yet. This is pure hype.
Mm-hmm.
So until Vision Pro launches, all we know is these will eventually support lossless, but your old ones will not. So you should buy a new one. But then maybe when Vision Pro comes out and people test it, they're like, eh.
It is interesting where Apple
not...
decides to plant their flag and or fight their battles. Where in some cases they decide to ignore like conversations entirely and pretend like no one ever said anything about it. In other respects, it's like, let's feed them information that they really don't need right now and probably wouldn't care about. But we're going to make them really care about it, and we're not going to mention it anymore. Or like not talk about it anymore, and we'll let them stew on it. So that way we get that much more
it is weird.
interest in the product, even though it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's got a new chip in it. Still has the same name, still looks the same, has a new port on it, I guess. But yeah, it's fascinating, in my opinion, to see where Apple decides to focus their efforts and like push whatever story that they want to tell. Where it's like,
yeah,
let's talk about USB-C finally, rather than we'll never do that. In the same,
that's true. There was that interview, wasn't it? Was it this year or last year where they were asking?
I think it was last year, right?
Like, they were like, "Hey, so the EU wants you to switch it to Type C. Are you guys gonna do it?" And Jaws was like, "Well, we don't think governments should be able to do blah blah blah." And he did on this whole thing about e-waste and how switching to Type C isn't a good idea, and then they do it. Now they do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it felt very, in my opinion, like they were dragging their feet a little bit, because while they did get Type C, they didn't support any faster charging speeds.
Mm-hmm.
The power output is pretty slow. It's only 4.5 watts, which is pretty low compared to what they've done on other products. And the 15 Pros didn't get Thunderbolt like a lot of us were thinking they would. So it felt to me like, okay, we'll do it, but I'm not gonna like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at this point they are definitely seeing the writing on the wall that we're reaching levels on the phone design that we're dealing with right now that we can't make giant leaps anymore. Now it has to be smaller leaps, but we have to make them more exciting smaller leaps. So maybe they look at stuff like Thunderbolt 5 and they're like, we'll get to that maybe in like 3 or 4 generations.
Right. We need to save that for next year so that it feels like a big
even next year, maybe 2 years. And what they'll do is like what they've done now. Again, this is my own little theory. They switch over from Lightning to USB-C, but they don't go immediately to Thunderbolt, because what they want to do is probably just say, look, we have a new port, but it's just going to maintain the same speeds that they already have already, maybe even slower in some respects, but maybe even faster in some others. And then the next generation with the 16s, they're like, okay, now we'll up the speeds a little bit to where the Pros get like Thunderbolt 3 or 4 level speeds. And then we get to now like, all right, we're climbing the racks of this ladder that is Thunderbolt. And then we get, hopefully we don't get to where it's like, all right, Thunderbolt 6 just came out. We need to put in a new speed on these USB-Cs on these iPhones.
I'm just trying to figure out what an iPhone is going to do with that.
Right, exactly. And no one seems to ask, why? Why do we need Thunderbolt 6 speeds or 5 speeds on the phone? That, like, I guess you're maybe demonstrating it decently well with being able to plug in a microphone or something else into the 15.
That's been helpful.
And, like, maybe there's something that could utilize those Thunderbolt speeds. Like, booting Mac OS or something else.
That's pretty much all I can think of. I know it's not data transfer speeds because the read and write isn't fast enough to make a noticeable difference. So all Thunderbolt is really beneficial to is if you're doing data transfer and video output simultaneously. So if they were planning some big external monitor revamp, which they kind of did one, the pros support, I think now you can output a 4K at 60 hertz HDR signal, but it's still just a mirroring of the phone. It just takes what's on the phone and puts it on the TV, which is not exactly what I was hoping for, but
some
still,
people want that.
I guess, yeah. Have you seen the people doing the like treating it like a game console?
I have not seen that yet, unfortunately, but it does excite me that Apple is right. It is funny that they are now well, not funny. It's great to see that they are focusing on gaming finally, and that you're able to play games like Assassin's Creed Mirage on an iPhone, and supposedly have a pretty decent time with the quality and gameplay just in general, not have any laggy experience. But of course, we don't know that yet. We have to still wait and see when that game comes out and any other AAA title games come out, if it can handle it. If it can, with decent like fervor or whatever, then great. That's awesome. That means that Apple can finally stand as a company that, hey, we can do it with our tech, and these these third-party companies have made agreements with us to make these games under Mac OS or iOS, and they work. Let's get more in here. So then finally we see games like Starfield or Skyrim or Halo or Last of Us come on
like
to
that'll ever happen.
come on to Mac OS or iOS, or that'd be fun. iOS, or not iOS, iPad OS.
I forgot. I keep forgetting
that exists as well. Or WatchOS. How about that?
That'll probably get it first.
Can it play Doom? That'll be the new test. So I think that's what maybe I'm a little bit more happy and excited for, is that they actually put some time in the event towards, hey, look what we can do with this new chip that we're only putting in the 15 Pros, but it's able to play a video game without any problems. And it's like, okay, that sounds promising. Can you do it? And if so, make more deals with gaming companies so that way this giant barrier that's existed between Apple and video game companies can finally erode, and we can finally get on like Steam or on EA Play or whatever else the ability to be like, yeah, I'd like to download the Mac OS version of it or the iOS version of it, and it doesn't feel like the Nintendo Wii version of a game versus the PS2 version of a game, where they're totally different games, even though they've got the same name and kind of have the same box art or whatever. Like, if it's the same game, or if you're outputting the game on the PlayStation 5, I hope it's the exact same game on the Mac version of it or the iPhone version of it. And then I think at that point, I will have zero complaints about Apple in gaming. And like this whole entire argument of people being like, oh, you have a MacBook? Good luck playing video games on that. Like, those things can go away, because games are meant to be played by everyone, even if you don't care about games. I think the ability to play a game on whatever tech product that you got, whether it is a phone, an iPad, a computer, whether it's a giant tower or just a slim MacBook Air, assuming that it can handle it with whatever specs that the game recommends for your system, and it's not a crazy hit in performance, or you don't have to download a third-party software to just be able to play it. I think that's the future that
this
I'm really
sounds
excited
very
for.
EU of you.
Well,
you don't like...
That's why I blurred out my background, so that way you
titles
couldn't see the Union Jack hiding over here. But
Sound like the European Union. There shouldn't be exclusives or anything. Every game should play on every device, and every OS should be on every screen.
If it has a port, it has to be USB-C. If it has ones and zeros, it must be able to play a game.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, um, with the EU getting their way, it seems like more and more, your dream might come true because the biggest dilemma preventing like Steam games or Xbox games from coming to the phone is mostly App Store licensing stuff. I wouldn't even say it's much silicon problems. It's more just Apple wants their cut. Microsoft doesn't want to put up with that cut. So if the EU says, hey, you have to allow alternative stores or sideloading, then that might make those things possible. So
Hmm. Who knows?
there you
Just
go.
just like the USB-C debacle, the gaming industry also has their own with things like buying up companies like Microsoft's trying to do and apparently
Oh,
has
yeah.
succeeded at. Um,
Yes.
with a lot of backlash from many different parties. But still, at the end of
Sure.
the day, if it means that we get better tech products, I think it might be worth it, assuming that there isn't too many
Yeah.
sacrifices in security and safety.
Why not? Why not? No, I'm with you there. I don't think exclusive titles will be as profitable maybe as they used to, but it's like, hey, Apple's got their own little Nintendo Switch now. They've got their own little gaming thing
Right.
going for them.
So you've
This,
been. I wanted to ask then. You've been having a. We went off the path very long ago at this point. I think it's been about 20 minutes probably. Are you happy with the 15 then? Enough to where
yes,
like it's been overly positive with your time that I
it's
guess it's
been
been a week or so, right?
yeah, almost. It's been absurdly positive. It's like been a very it may be because this is the first year in a while that I'm rocking an older iPhone and making the jump to the latest iPhone, so that maybe there's more noticeable differences. But this phone is crazy light
Mm-hmm.
compared to most other flagships I've held. And I also think, just in terms of choice of materials, this was a great call. It's got like everything I want. It's got the aluminum chassis, which I've always said that's better at the heat dissipation. That's cleaner. It's not as fingerprinty. It's lighter. It's just a good choice. The rounded off edge makes it super comfortable to hold. It's way more comfortable than the squared off phones I used to hold.
That's awesome.
And frosted glass. I love that, but it was always a pro feature,
Mm-hmm.
so you could never get it. If you got a pro phone, you had to put up with the fingerprinty steel. So for years, I was always saying, "Can't they just give me aluminum with the frosted glass?"
There it
Finally,
is.
so that's a big relief. It's a very pretty design. I like finally having like a dynamic island on a non-pro as well. That's cool
Have you
to
been
see.
enjoying some of the perks of the dynamic island for like some
Yeah, I
notifications
mean,
or some passive uh I guess uses of soft what am I trying to say? Have you used the
no, I
dynamic
know what you
island at
get.
all?
Not as much as I would like. I love it whenever it's doing something.
Okay.
Whenever it's in the middle of an activity, I love it. It's so cool. It's like, oh wow, it's right there. I can see it, and I can still go about the phone. Like airdrop is something I do all the time, and to actually have the status of that airdrop show up in the top,
Hmm.
you don't get that on the older iPhones, even with iOS 17 with the notches. So I was like, oh, that's handy. I get the little animation. And what I love the attention to detail with it, which I guess, I tested the 14 Pro Max last year, but I totally forgot.
Hmm.
Um, like when I'm playing a song and I reduce it, the album art and the now playing animation, for one, the little animation syncs up with the music. That's not
Right.
just a repeat. Some apps actually just have a little
Hmm.
animated
Just a
sound thing,
waveform
but
that
they're,
does nothing.
yeah. This one is actually in sync with the music, which I'm like, wow, how much extra processing data. But not only that, if you play a different song with a different album art, then the waveforms change color,
Hmm.
which I guess I forgot about. That probably was a day one feature, but even it supports it even on YouTube Music, by the way. You don't need Apple Music. So whenever I was listening to music and I would leave and it would still be up there moving. And I had a phone call the other day, which is kind of rare for me, but I noticed that when the other person's talking, it does green wavelengths, and when I'm talking, it does orange. And I'm just like, geez, some software team had a lot of fun with this.
How creative
They
can you
had a
get with a
good time.
waveform?
Yeah, and it's being able to expand it and scrub and skip right
Right.
there.
Have you
Like,
tried swiping? So like if you've got two things going on. Like, let's just say you have a timer and you're playing music.
Oh, right.
Have you found that you
Yeah.
can swipe left or right on the island, which then changes what it looks like?
The problem I haven't. I know that's a thing, but the problem is I've never been in that many situations where that comes up, where I'm doing like multiple
That's a
things
niche
at
thing.
once.
That's just something that I found out
It's cool though.
maybe a couple
I
months ago.
appreciate
Yeah.
As someone who really appreciates little attentions to detail, I think that's the main reason so many people love iOS is just because of tiny little. They get the animation right, they get the format, the app optimization right. Like there's tiny little things. I was just watching Chris from Dirty Tesla like just yesterday. He launched a tech channel now where he's like, because he's been on Android all his life and now he's trying an iPhone. And I was like, oh, this is cool.
He's
and
like
even
the reverse
he
version
was
of
trying
you.
to Yeah, pretty much. But
Anyways.
he's not listening. But he was even trying to articulate it. He was like, third-party apps are just better on the iPhone. And he's not an Apple sheep by any means. He was saying like, I prefer this about Android and I think Android does this better. But at the same time, he was like, there's something about iOS that just feels smoother, that just feels better.
I think I
it's
saw one of those
tiny-
tweets about him commenting on the the Tesla app, where he's like, it just feels
Yes.
so much better on the iPhone than it did on whatever Android device he had before, which
Right.
I've never noticed because, well, I've only had an iPhone with my car. But yeah, things that I find, at least with the Dynamic Island as my daily
Yeah.
driver with the 14 Pro, that I
Yeah, you're used to it.
recently found that I take for granted is the fact that on the 12 that my wife has, whenever we're routing somewhere, it takes up like maybe a fifth of the screen of just like showing like, here's where you're going next. You're going to be turning left or
Oh.
whatever. Where on the
Right.
14, it just keeps it up in the
Huh.
Dynamic Island. And like it gives you the rest of the screen real estate for when like
Oh.
you're swiping up to go to
I
something
haven't
else.
noticed that. I normally
least-
just use the car navigation. I haven't used Apple Maps in a while, I realized.
Right. Well,
Huh.
I can't really well, I can road trip around with the electric car, but as you can tell, I'm not with whatever I'm in right now, being a
Yeah,
trailer.
you're towing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I get it.
Unfortunately, the Y
I
cannot
love the
tow.
the charging animation too. I just remembered I put it on the charger and
Or
it
just low
does that
power.
little-
It just gives you a low power warning, but
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's not in your face of like press dismiss to get rid of the notification.
Yeah,
It's
you
just-
have to.
it's
I
just up
hate
there.
that. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. The
It's-
Dynamic Island solves fluidity, or no, it increases fluidity for usage
Yes.
of the phone for whatever circumstance that you're in, whether it is listening to music, receiving a phone
Right.
call, navigating to somewhere, or anything else. It's just able to
Mhm.
manage whatever processes are going on there so much better
Yeah,
in
and
a more
it's.
visually pleasing way.
I'm just so glad it's not a pro thing anymore. It's so cool that you can get that on any of the new 15s because it's a real quality of life feature that I don't believe should be a pro perk. I think Apple probably every year is trying to figure out what is that line between everyday consumer and pro feature. And personally, I think ProMotion with 120 hertz is a perfect example. Here's something a techie person is going to care about and an everyday person will not care about. So 60 hertz, I'm personally like, I'm fine with that because I know that a lot of people don't notice the difference. And I don't care if there's people out there that are like, I don't see it, but they can feel it. You know, for that kind of money, you should get that much. I'm like, okay, you can argue all you want, but in my opinion, it would still be a waste because the vast majority of people would still not notice or care. And that's why so many people are buying the 15 and are perfectly happy with it like me. And I'm like, yeah, this is a super bright display. It's just as bright now as the 14 and 15 Pros. And it's been a long, long time. I can't remember actually the last time that the cheaper entry level had the same brightness as the more expensive models. So that was kind of a relief. And now the camera features with the 48 megapixel, and even when you don't take a max shot, they call it HEIF max or whatever, it still defaults to 24 megapixels, which is much sharper than the 12 as before. Again, I'm still somewhat unimpressed / disappointed with the ultra wide lens, but that main sensor is amazing. And this year I'm definitely leaning more towards like, yeah, I think the pros are just kind of a waste of time. I think they are doing a lot of flexing. They're doing a lot of look at a titanium. Everything is white titanium, natural titanium, blue titanium. Everything is titanium, and it's just more fingerprinty. It's worse for the thermals, and the cameras, in my opinion, aren't that different. Pretty much the only advantage of the pros is zoom, and the zooming is honestly really good considering there's no telephoto lens. It's still like you can. I'm trying to think of a term. I'm struggling with this because, I was filming an EV video the other day with the iPhone 15, and I needed to pinch inward, but I didn't want to lose any quality. And I realized that because it's a 48 megapixel sensor and you only need 8 megapixels to hit 4K, you can pinch to zoom in despite there being not a telephoto, but you're technically not losing any pixels. Like you're just capturing a tighter number of pixels on that big sensor. So I zoomed in on the video. It was like 1.6x and I hit record, and it still was super sharp when I was editing it. I was like, this looks great. Like this is no one noticed that I switched from my Blackmagic to an iPhone for that video. It just blended in, and it was super easy to set up, and you don't have to worry about focusing because it's all autofocus and all that. And AirDrop support was great. So I was just like, it's not optical zoom because it's not a physical lens changing, but it feels wrong to call it digital zoom because most people, when you say digital zoom, they assume you just mean crop, just like pinch to zoom that just crops in on the sensor and it looks more pixelated. But what do you call it if when you pinch to zoom in it doesn't get more pixelated? What's the proper terminology there? I don't know. Like it's not optical, but it's not quite digital.
Some weird ZH effect in which ZH in this case is the typical action movie zoom and enhance.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's zoom and enhance. That's what it is.
Yeah. So Apple's somehow found a way to ZH whatever zooming that they're doing with their phones, which I think only just shows how well they've gotten dialed into their lenses and how much they know what they can just optimize and or improve on, or even just play with. Like, how can we make this a better picture with the given lenses that we have for this generation? And somehow they're able to literally make it like an action movie of zoom and enhance, and it doesn't look bad.
Yeah, I'm impressed, honestly. It's totally not what I used to think. I remember in the old days saying telephoto lens will always be better than some, because at the time Google was doing that. Google was known for doing this whole, you don't need multiple lenses, you can just
one.
Use AI to enhance and just crop in on the main sensor. And I was like, no, you can't beat hardware. And now I'm like, okay, maybe you can't beat the hardware because there's a certain amount of compromising whenever you switch to a physical telephoto lens because the aperture can't be as wide, and usually that means the sensor size is smaller and there's more noise and there's more grain. So you notice it in older videos and stuff. When you pinch to zoom and you switch to that telephoto, there's this jarring kind of, we switched. The perspective changes a little bit. It gets a little darker. It gets a bit more noisy. And it's really obvious, okay, he switched to the telephoto lens. But with this, it's seamless because, of course, there isn't a telephoto lens. So you just retain that quality and pan in and out, and it's smooth, and you're still 4K even when you're pinched in. And I was like, that's really smart. That's really clever.
We're getting to the level on cameras to where it's becoming magic instead of like, what was the whole statement? It's like any engineering feat that's indistinguishable from, I forget the whole quote. Basically,
that you can't explain, that you can't understand.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's now become magic per se, in which I'm fully fine with it at this point because people who work on cameras, both mechanically or software wise, are wizards to me. Like, it's
Oh,
impressive stuff that you can
yeah,
do optically with anything. Like,
it is incredible.
it's crazy
So
stuff just dealing with even with what they put into the pros of not even doing a periscope lens, of doing a
tetra prism.
tetra prism lens or whatever like that. Like, who would have thought of
Yeah, that's
that?
pretty
I guess the
nutty.
Apple engineers. They're almost like on par with
I didn't see that
Imagineers
coming.
in regards to
But I
like how
wasn't.
creative you can get. It's insane.
Yeah, I wasn't terribly impressed by it, to be honest.
I am.
Everything around the pros has been kind of. You were impressed by
I
Tetra Prism?
Yeah, that and just the pros in general, like to put titanium on a consumer product that you're shipping by millions. Basically, it beats out Ford trucks, and the next best thing after that is something else. I forget. Um, like
It's a
to
lot of
put
titanium.
it's a lot of titanium that you're doing. I mean, like to be fair, not a lot of the phone is titanium, but you're still using titanium on your product in a exterior chassis form, and that's going to
Hmm.
cost you a lot of money unless you found a way to like decrease the amount of it or produce it or manufacture it in a way that isn't costing as
Right.
much. And it sounds like with how people are scratching theirs that it's a very
Yeah.
thin layer of anodizing and all
Yeah.
that and whatever else
And
that
then
they
there's
add onto it.
aluminum underneath.
Right.
Yeah, that whole thing has made me go, see, this is perfect for techie people. A techie, nerdy person is going to like go, I want it to be made of something more important. It's got to be better. It's got to be
It's got to be
richer,
emerald.
but then, yeah, it gotta be but then in my head, I'm like, okay, but what does that unlock? If it's worse at heat dissipation, it collects more fingerprints, and it's more prone to scratching. I'm like, is it just the fact that titanium is a more precious or more expensive metal than aluminum? So people like to, they want to flex the pro. Like, look, mine's titanium. Oh, okay, that's special. It's like 60 hertz versus 120 hertz. Does 120 hertz actually inherently unlock something? No, it's just kind of a quality of life thing. I mean, I notice it, I appreciate it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like the phone fundamentally can do more. It's totally like, okay, more techie person would appreciate that, everyday person wouldn't. So I think I think they made some pretty good calls this year. I don't know how you would rate it out of 10 or whatever, but I was very happy with the iPhone 15 line overall.
Despite the fact that there's no mini, I would say
Oh, true. I forgot about
there's
that.
still room for improvement. But yeah,
Yes, for
I
sure.
I don't really have too many complaints. It seems like the pros are meant to be bougie in the way that they're meant to give you more stuff, and they did. They gave you a lighter chassis with more battery life and
Action button.
action button and just titanium in general. Um,
They're
where
really proud of it. On all the ads I'm seeing too,
well,
it's
so
always like
you're not
everybody
gonna
look.
flex tetra prism because you're not seeing that. You're not really gonna flex an action button because it's like, oh, Apple's flexing the fact that they added a button again. So it's like, okay, well, what are you gonna flex on? The new material being titanium, in which it's a good material. It's just gonna cost you a bunch of money, and it's got some of its drawbacks. Um, it'll be interesting to
I don't
see if
think it's
they.
the right material, personally.
You think there's maybe a different material, like carbon fiber or something, that might be better?
It's this very special metal. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's called
It just came out.
aluminum.
Just dropped last week.
It just came out, new metal unlocked. But no, like I think aluminum work. I love this phone, dude. Like this is a good design. It's clean. It's
It
light.
reminds me of mine.
It's
It looks
yeah.
good. Looks
It's
clean.
not it's not super fingerprinty.
I can't
It's
tell it's blue on this
considering
video call that we have right now. It just looks like a white iPhone, in which I'm sure there is a
exactly.
bit of a hue on your end, but like doesn't really matter.
Honestly,
But
they probably could have called it either. They could have called this white, and I bet a lot of people would have accepted. Oh, it's a cooler tone of white. Okay, okay.
Wanderlust white.
Wonder. Yeah. I just telephoto lenses feel overrated to me because normally when you fixate zoom in, you compromise on the lighting and it makes the sensor smaller. So just crop in on a huge sensor with a wider aperture. That's what this is. I got the frosted glass, I got the aluminum, I got the island. I'm just like, I can't complain much about this, but I don't think there's going to be that many people with phones like, man, I wish it was titanium. I think titanium's an important, valuable metal. It's just, I don't know if this is the right application with a device that gets hot, that people drop or touch. You know, if there's a material that you're going to put on the outside of a phone, I would say don't make it super fingerprinty, because this is something that people literally touch all day, every day. So try to make it a little bit more anti-fingerprint or more durable when it comes to scratches or scuffs and that kind of thing. So to me, the titanium feels much more. The main reason I was excited for it during the leaks and rumors, before everybody calls me a hypocrite, was I thought this would remove the stainless steel glossiness. I was just like, I don't want fingerprints on there. But then once the titanium iPhones came out and they all had fingerprints, I'm like, never mind. I've lost all interest now. It's like, well, if we still got fingerprints, just go with aluminum. So entry model gets a big thumbs up for me. Pros get a like,
I mean, that's
right.
better than bad, right? I mean, it seems like,
yeah, and they're not
what
bad.
we covered earlier in the podcast. Like, there has been years recently where the pros were very lackluster, or
That's
the
true.
regulars were very lackluster. And if like the
Yeah.
regulars this year get like 2 thumbs up and the pros this year get like 2 thumbs sideways, sounds like an absolute win to me.
Yeah, I would say this was a pretty substantial year compared to what we're probably going to get in the future. Now that we've switched the connector over, it's like, okay, that's over with. Very likely, knowing Apple, they're probably going to keep Type-C for at least another 10 years. If they want to change it in 2033, they're going to have to ask the EU for permission. So
Can we change
something
our
tells me
port,
this.
sir? No.
And I know, I don't know, it's comforting to finally have validation about the Type-C connector on there. It's no longer a rumor, because we know, thanks to a day before the event, that Intel dropped, Thunderbolt 5.
Right.
And we also know now, because of the IP ratings on these phones, that they're just as water resistant and dust resistant as before, even though there's a new connector. So that squashes all the people claiming, yeah, USB-C isn't as durable as Lightning. You can't be as water resistant. Shut up. And the future, you can't say, well, what if this port isn't good enough? It's like, okay, well, we literally know how to do 240 watts over this port. And now Intel has figured out how to do 80 gigabits per second. So you're going to have to come up with some pretty crazy smartphone features to get to a point where this connector isn't enough.
Right.
Like, well,
You're going to need to come out with a whole new standard of USB, or even something that
USB
Apple...
5.
Or no, Lightning 2.
Lightning 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
But Mike, Thunder comes after Lightning.
Yeah, but what comes after Thunder and after Lightning?
Rain storm?
Fires?
Fire. Wildfire, the new charge
The
port.
Wildfire
Just a
port.
little- Firewire. That was the name.
There we go.
They had that.
I still
It's
have that
full
port, I think.
circle. You see the lightning, you hear the thunder, and then the wildfire, because Apple's in California.
It's the California port.
Firewire. What was the last Firewire generation? 2? They'll come out with Firewire 3.
It's just
and that'll
more
be the
slimmed
new-
down. It's like... It just goes back to, like, was it the 16-pin or 32-pin? 32-pin or something like that.
32.
It's just that
No,
again.
I've got it. Every generation has to be more, I don't know, universal, right? So Lightning was reversible, so you could plug it in either way this way. But USB-C was bilateral, so you could plug in either end of the cable now. Lightning couldn't do that. The next thing is going to be, it has to be a circle. It's got to be a barrel plug so that it can be plugged in at any orientation. It's the headphone jack. We're bringing it back. We're making it full circle.
I was going to say, this is just an aux port at this point.
Yeah. An aux port that does power, data, Well, I guess the aux power would do that, but more power, more data.
But it
Even
still
more
needs to be
aux.
smaller somehow, and also more waterproof. Man, I do not envy the engineer that has to do that later.
And then the EU has to mandate it.
Require
This will
everyone.
be an
You're
interesting.
now going to Firewire 5 or whatever it is.
Firewire. Okay, I like this plan. I think we got it all figured out.
Yeah. I guess to clear the room, I'm not buying anything from this new Wonderlust event, or at least I don't intend on it unless something breaks and it's like, oh no.
Me neither.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So the 15 just is, I see how it is. Yeah. I think probably the 17s, 16s, 16s or 17s is where I'll be looking for my next upgrade for a phone. But for right now, I'll be sitting on the sidelines enjoying people enjoy their 15s, whether they are made out of titanium or aluminum, and
Yes.
see how they survive the elements, and also how the 14 Pro's battery and
Oh yeah,
basically
what's
the
your?
rest of
Do
the
you know what
14
your
Pro.
health is at?
It's
I
at
don't know. You can't
gosh.
check it right now.
I can't check it right now. Here, we'll put the number right here. Look at that number.
There it is.
What an impressive number. It's somewhere in the 90s, probably, or 89.
Or ooh, that's bad already.
It has been a year. It's you know,
Jeez.
honestly, I think it is 88. I think I was mixing that up on the watch. The watch is at 77.
Oh,
The phone's probably at 88. So
gotcha.
I think probably by next year,
Hey,
maybe a new one.
you know what else? What else is stupid that I forgot to mention?
Tell me what's stupid
Something
about
else
this phone.
Something stupid that I love
That sounds
is
stupid.
remember what my top feature for iOS 17 was? The charge limiter.
Right, and now that's a thing. It's so cool.
But only on the 15.
Interesting.
Why? What? That doesn't.
Induce
like,
demand.
I want to preserve my battery. Okay, but only if it's brand new. If your battery's already starting to degrade, we're not going to let you preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
You're stuck. You need the glorious power of the A17 chip in order to tell the battery to stop charging at 80%. But I turned this on from day one.
Nice.
I've never turned it off. So my phone is just in full NMC Tesla battery pack mode. It's just all 80% cap. Only go to 100% if you really need to. And I'm like, I love this feature. It's great. I leave my phone on the charger and it just stays there at 80.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I've always wanted this, but I didn't think I would have to buy a new phone to access this. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. Oh well.
What else
Hopefully.
will they gatekeep with software? It'll be interesting to see what the 16 does in terms of hiding things behind the software barrier from the last generation.
What
of
else
the
could they
generation
do?
before.
I'm trying to think.
They could
If,
do
I feel
anything,
like they're
Jordan.
listening. It feels like anytime I suggest something, they kind of do it.
Could you
but not
suggest
really.
more for the watch and the iPad then? If like you're claiming that they're listening, could you do more for those?
Seriously. I feel okay, they're going to eliminate the wobble, but it'll be a software update.
Oh.
They'll find a way to stop the camera bump from making the phone do this.
It has a piston
over
come
the
out
air.
the other side of it, so that way it's got at least 2 or 3 points of contact.
Just when you press on it, though.
Right.
Only when it just...
It's like one of those like little child toys where like you push on one side and another part of it comes out.
Yes.
It's that with the screen. You push the screen down and
That's
it
it.
engages the piston
We
on the
got
other
it.
side. Yeah. We solved it.
We figured it out.
You're welcome, Apple.
Alrighty.
This
Any
was
closing
fun.
thoughts?
Glad that we could get this in, Drew. Hopefully we keep this a little bit more regular. We'll try. Apologies,
We're doing our
audience.
best, guys.
We're trying our
Everyone
best.
asking.
I mean-
Everyone's all over the place. This one almost didn't happen, but we tried. So,
All the way from the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, we were able to produce this podcast just for you. No, we'll try our best for the next one, and hopefully get it
Sounds
in next
good.
week or the week after. If not, we'll figure out something else.
We'll see you when we see you. Take care, all. Bye-bye.